Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Paul Tilley, and today we're going to be talking about pricing, which is Unit 3. Well, first and foremost, we have to ask, what exactly is price? Price is really a term that we associate with the value of exchange. It's the money or other consideration that is exchanged for the right to use or own a specific item or service. So if you want to buy a car, the car has a price. So in order to be able to own the car and use the car, you have to pay that price. But price could also be in terms of barter. It could be, I give you a loaf of bread, you give me a pot of tea. So again, it is some form of exchange that's going on, and money is most commonly considered to be the exchange, but it could be anything else as well. Of the four P's, the product, the price, the promotion, and the place, price is the only one that generates revenue. And if we think about price and say, well, how does it generate revenue? Well, if we sell something for $1, let's say, and we sell 1,000 copies of it, our revenue will be $1,000. $1 times 1,000 sold, $1,000 revenue. Now, don't confuse revenue and profit. Revenue is the total monies we have come in based on our sales. From that, expenses are taken away, and we consider our revenue less expenses. That will give us our profit, or in some cases, a loss. In order to be able to think about pricing traditionally the most common way we think about pricing is you really need to charge enough for your product in order to make money at it. So if you think about pricing is normally considered what's called a cost basis, meaning that we know how much something costs to make. We have to sell it for more than that in order really to make any money. So our profit will come from the difference between what it costs to make it and what we sell it for. And that's really the essence behind the concept of cost-based pricing. In recent years, another concept has come up that has really been considered the new mantra, and that is value-based pricing. If we think about pure cost only relates to dollars. Value pricing looks at the amount of benefit that you get relative to the amount that you spend. So for example, if I spend a little bit of money, but I also don't get very much use, it was a low cost, but low use, meaning it has low value. If I spend a lot of money, but I get a tremendous amount of use out of it, the relative combination of cost and value is pretty close together. In other words, I got a good value for my money. So value-based pricing, what it tries to do is to establish a connection between the value you get out of a product, how useful it is to you, and the cost. And over the last number of years, manufacturers and their advertising is really focused on this concept of value, to say, okay, it may cost a little more, but it's worth it because. Now, having considered those couple of fundamental concepts, I wanted to take you through some of the issues that are raised here in the chapter with regards to how prices, how that sticker on the item that says it costs $1.89, how that sticker got there. What was the decision process making in order to determine what that product would sell for? So let's take a look at it. If we think about it, companies need to be able to make profit. So they need fundamentally to sell it for more than they make it for. So the cost-based method. We also talked about the value-based method, meaning that they have to give customers something of value and customers will buy it. So it kind of creates a demand for the product. A lot of organizations work somewhere between those two extremes. We see in the textbook talks about good value pricing. A lot of people will value, for example, cheap airline tickets in order to get from point A to point B. Now your knees might be up in your face because your seats are so close together, but people say, well, I can tolerate that for an hour if I get there quick and cheap. We also think about value-added pricing. Do some price that's charged on it give extra value? So It's what kind of features are on this. So for example, I'll pay a little bit more for it if it will give me some extra value. I'll pay a bit more for a hamburger if it is a Weight Watchers hamburger, or if it's sugar-free or fat-free, these sorts of things. And that is where we add value to products. We also talk about the concept of costs in here. And one of the things that you need to consider is how much does something cost, but what are the components of that cost? Well, costs usually come in two components. A fixed cost, meaning that's a cost that doesn't change depending on, if you make one product or 1,000 products, you're going to have a fixed cost. Let's think of a car manufacturing plant. You're going to have to build a plant, regardless if you produce one car from that plant or 1,000 cars from that plant. So that plant is what's called fixed. In other words, the costs are the same regardless if you make one product or 1,000 products. Variable costs are the second type of cost, and these are the costs that vary from one unit to the next, and usually is associated with the amount of product that you put into the car in my example. So the more cars you build, for example, the more steering wheels, tires, engines, seats you'll need, and you have to buy those things, and so your costs go up. As you make more products, you incur more costs. So total cost is a component of a car that is made up of the fixed cost associated with that car and the variable cost. Companies need really to be able to think about these things before they start selling products. So if we look at where that sticker comes from on the product, one of the things companies need to do is say, what are our objectives? What do we want to do? Make a lot of money, sell a lot of product, sell a lot of volume, garner a chunk of the market that we didn't think we could do, these sorts of things. Companies set key objectives for the product, sell lots, and so on, are examples of objectives. We also have companies are faced with some constraints. They can't sell it for less than they make it for. So there's a range of pricing that a company has to put on a product that goes from its highest possible price to its lowest possible price. The other factor that comes into thinking about how much price you should charge for something is how many units you're going to sell. The more units you sell, the costs can be spread, the fixed costs can be spread over a larger number of products. The fewer units you sell, the less that you spread over a fewer number of products. So low volume products tend to be more expensive because the higher fixed cost is built into those products. So depending on the demand, you're going to have to take a look at that. And we look at this issue of demand quite a bit in this chapter on a couple of things. You're looking at demand in terms of a concept called elasticity. And essentially what elasticity means is how sensitive people are to buying units of product with given price changes. So let's assume the price goes up by 10% of a given product. The price of it started at $1 and went to $1.10. What impact is that going to have on people's willingness to purchase that product? And it will be inversely related. Higher price, less products are sold. But is it a lot less or a little bit less? Inelastic demand says that price can increase a fair bit and demand won't be impacted that much. So certain products tend to be more elastic than others, and you can think of elastic demand type products as being non-essential or easily replaceable products, whereas inelastic demand tends to be for essential products such as medicine or food that people are going to have to buy regardless. We also think about the idea of putting price on product, considering this issue of the fact that demand changes as the price increases. And we're introduced to a concept called the break-even analysis. Now, the break-even analysis, you should probably run across it in your math course, you're going to run across it in your economics course, and you're going to run across it here. Essentially, what this is it takes the three important components. The price of the product that you plan to sell it for, the fixed cost of the product, and the variable unit cost of the product. And what it does is it takes those three factors and it says at what point will the total revenue from your sales, because you're selling it at a certain price times a certain quantity, that will be your total revenue, at what point will your total revenue match or equal your total cost, which is made up of your fixed cost and your combination of unit variable costs. That point is called the break-even point. It is the point in sales volume, at which the total money coming in balances the total money going out. You take a look at the graphic in the textbook and in the notes, and the concept of break-even is explained there thoroughly. You need to go through and do a couple of examples of this. I'm just going to take a very brief minute to go through the example that's in your textbook. So first of all, I want you to take a look at table 11.1. And table 11.1, I've got the slide up here now over my shoulder. You'll see that what we have is a series of prices that we could charge for something, $14 through to $22. So there's a range of prices. The demand over that price range is reflected. So for example, at $14, the demand is estimated to be $75,000. At $22, it's at $25,000. So you'll see that demand will decrease as price goes up. Now, the expected unit demand at a given price is given there as well. The total revenue is simply the price times the expected unit demand. The total cost, which is a combination of fixed cost and variable cost, is given there. So you can see the total cost. And it assumes that the fixed cost is $300,000 and a unit variable cost is $10. So, and the profit then is the difference between the revenue and the cost. So understand how those numbers are calculated. Now we can plot those numbers on a graph, and the graph is in figure 11.5. First and foremost, the straight line, the fixed cost line, is the $300,000 fixed cost as determined. What you need to do in order to be able to calculate or to plot the total revenue line is simply take the revenue per unit and plot 2 points. I always like the first point, which is 0. We're not selling any units, so how much revenue is, if you don't sell any units, how much revenue do you get? 0. 0 and 0, you will see it comes at the origin, or at the intersection point between the two lines. Then I want you to take the any other point. So let's just take an arbitrary figure of a sales volume of 50,000 units. So at 50,000 units, at a price of 16, your total revenue is going to be $72,000, and you plot that there on your graphic. That will draw and connect the dots, and that will draw your total revenue line. Total cost line is the other line that you need to put in, and you'll notice that your total cost, if your production is 0, you will see that the 0 point is started at your fixed cost line. Why is that? Because if you don't produce any units, you still have fixed costs. So the fixed cost we've determined to be $300,000. So at 0 units, your variable cost is 0. So it comes to that intersection point there of your fixed cost line. Then you can simply plot any other point along the line. So let's say a sales volume of 50,000. What is the total cost? Well, it's 300,000 fixed plus whatever the variable cost is. That will draw that point. You'll draw that line, and the intersection between the 2 points is called the break-even. We also have some other issues related to pricing. We talk about competition-based pricing, which is looking at the competitors and saying, what are you guys charging? We should charge about the same, we should charge more, or we should charge less, depending on the strategy you choose. We also talk about some other considerations that organizations would have when they put a price on something. You know, what's the market demand for the product? What type of market are we dealing with? Is it a market that is a captive market, for example? You know, can they go buy it somewhere else very easily? If not, we can charge a higher price. If they can, we're forced to charge a lower price. We talked about elasticity. You got to look at what the external events are going on in the economy. other external factors in terms of the newness of product, competitive situation, political situation, all these things affect price. We also talk about new product strategies for pricing, and companies need to consider about things like skimming pricing. Now, skimming is an interesting term. What skimming means is that you're trying to skim like the cream off the milk. What skimming pricing does is it says, I don't want to sell a lot, but I want to sell to the high end of the market, or the people who can afford it. So essentially, I can afford to charge them more. I won't sell as much product, but I'll make a higher profit on each one. Rolls-Royce, for example, you're selling luxury cars. You're not interested in selling high volumes of cars, but you're interested in making a lot of money on each one that you sell. So they use what's called a skimming strategy, which means that we're only interested in the top part of the market. We don't need to sell a lot of cars, but we're going to make a lot on each one we sell. The opposite perspective in terms of pricing is to look at what's called a penetration strategy. A penetration strategy says, we don't want to make a lot on each unit, but we want to sell a lot of units to compensate for it. So effectively, the profit is basically the same at the end as it would be in the market skimming strategy, but you got to sell a lot more units in order to make that profit. Now, if you're a small car manufacturer like Hyundai or Kia or Honda or Toyota, what you're doing there is you're selling in volume. You're selling thousands and thousands of cars, many more cars than Rolls-Royce sell. You're not making as much on each one, but at the end of the day, when we count up the numbers at the end of the year, each company is probably making a similar profit, because Rolls is making a lot of money on each unit they sell. Honda is not making a lot of money on each one they sell, but they sell a lot of units. So effectively, the profit would be very much similar. We also think about something called product line pricing. Product line pricing means companies allow themselves, recognize that certain customers are more willing to buy and more able to buy than others. So what companies often do is they consider some sort of a pricing strategy of taking a product and breaking it into different components: a high-end model, a medium model, and a low-end model. Okay, so cars, for example, a high-end model of the car, a medium model of the car, and a low-end model of the car. The low-end model of the car, you don't make a lot of money on that. They want to sell a lot of those. The high-end model of the car, they make a lot of money on that. They don't need to sell a lot. So what we got is a skimming strategy for the high-end model, a penetration strategy for the low-end model. From a customer's point of view, I can buy that car. I may not be able to afford the top-end model, but I can certainly afford the low-end model. And I'm satisfied because it will meet my value proposition. I want that car. For a high-end guy that says, well, you know, I can certainly afford a high-end model, I want all the bells and whistles, they can still buy that car. So this idea of line means that what a company does is they offer a range of products at a range of prices, so that a given customer can come in and buy their product, and it will meet the needs of a bunch of different customers. We've got some other lesser known ones. Optional product pricing, captive product pricing, buy product pricing. These are all pricing strategies that are used depending on the type of product that you're selling. You know, some companies, for example, car companies, will add options to cars and charge a higher price. Simple. Some companies know that they're the only game in town, meaning you have no competitors, so it's a captive market pricing. They can charge a higher price. Some companies make products, and in the process, they have byproducts. So for example, you run a sawmill, you're sawing logs and selling wood. One of the byproducts is sawdust. And well, if you could sell the sawdust for people to burn or use in some other product, you could supplement your revenues by selling the byproduct. And that's a way of adjusting a price so that you effectively make the same amount of money. We also have something called bundle pricing, and bundle pricing is common in the vacation industry, where you buy a package. So I'm buying the plane, the hotel, the vacation resort, the food, and I'm charging a fixed price for all of that sort of stuff. So we bundle it all together. Now, the customer benefits because of the lower price, but the point is, from the customer's perspective, is that there's no choice. You have to have this, 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 and this. You gotta fly on this airline, you gotta go to this resort, and you gotta eat this type of food. So that's the trade-off, and that's what bundle pricing allows us to do. In terms of, once we've got a general idea of our pricing using any of those strategies that I just discussed, we can even put a finer point depending on our customer by making special adjustments to the price, basically adjusting our price for certain things. And this is called price adjustment strategies. And price adjustment strategies allow a company to fiddle around with the price. On what basis do they fiddle around with the price? Well, they have to have a legitimate basis. So let's take a look at some legitimate basis. Discount or allowance pricing. What kind of discounts are you talking about? Well, seasonal discounts, a snowblower. It's springtime when I'm doing this. I haven't thought about buying a snowblower, but let's assume that I did. Why would I buy a snowblower now? Well, no good reason really. I'm not going to use it. I hope we're not going to get any snow. However, the company that makes snowblowers might incentivize me by charging me a lower price to buy it in the spring. And that way, they've got my money, which is good. Granted, they accept it less, but it gives them cash flow. So they can sell product during the spring and summer. They're not making as much on it, but they can get product out the door, frees up their storage space, frees up their cash flow. So there's a big advantage to offering a seasonal discount. Another way that I could probably get some sort of a deal if I bought 10 snowblowers. Let's assume that I'm going out to buy 10 snowblowers. They're selling in volume. Well, they would give me a discount because selling to me, I'm buying 10. It's much easier to sell 10 very quickly to one person than it is to sell 1 to 10 people. So they'll give me some sort of a discount on that. So this is what we call volume discounts. So this is often combined with other type of factors that come into pricing. They talk about this funny concept of psychological pricing. When was the last time you went into a store, for example, and saw something priced at an even amount of money? $10, $2, $20, $20,000. No, normally it's $1.99 or 99 cents or $19,999. Why do companies do that? Well, psychologically in our brains, we think that $19,999 is less than $20,000. $20,000 kind of goes over that magic wall of $20,000. Or $1.99 is just below that magic wall of $2. People, and experiments have checked this, people will tend to buy more if it's a little bit less than that imaginary wall figure. So we see psychological pricing in stores all the time. This is why we have this odd-even pricing is often called. We also have promotional pricing. Some companies, for example, want to get things out the door and they have a sale on, or they have some sort of a fancy promotion where they drop the price for a little bit of time. Geographic pricing is another type of thing. Different parts of the country will have different pricing. How much does it cost to ship something to Newfoundland versus Southern Ontario, for example? And that's often reflected in the price, where companies can charge less in Southern Ontario, more in Newfoundland. Look at gas. We also have something that's brought in as of late into the market called dynamic pricing. And dynamic pricing is largely related to computerization. Dynamic pricing means that the price is always changing. If you think about an auction for something like on eBay, depending on the demand for it and how many people bid on it and all these sorts of things, that's going to affect the price that a given item sells for. And that price might go up or down depending on the day, the year, the demand, these sorts of things. That's what's known as dynamic pricing. In other words, the price is always changing. Airline tickets, hotels, all these sorts of things work on dynamic pricing, which is always adjusting. We also have international price changes. Sometimes international pricing is geared, so for example, certain countries you charge more, certain countries you charge less, depending on the market. Changing pricing is another issue that's talked about in here, and we have to think about what does it cost to change price, how hard is it, how easy is it, and it makes putting that $1.99 price tag on something very challenging for companies because they always have to be changing the price. So if the price is prone to changing a lot. Look at gas stations, always adjusting the price of gas. It's a lot of work. And certain products are easy to change price, other ones is not so easy to change price. So companies are very aware of that, and we have to contemplate how easy it is to change the price before we actually put that price on it. The last section talks about some of the issues with regards to public policy and pricing. You've heard of the competition board, for example. If companies were to collude or to get together and basically charge a high price to rip off customers, government looks at that very poorly and have policies and laws in place to essentially stop companies from doing that sort of thing. And companies had to be very careful when they advertise that they're not colluding or working against the best interests of the customer, because government regulations could come down and negatively affect them otherwise. So that's a very quick review of that chapter. I want you to take a look at it, do some examples of the break-even analysis. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.